Hey developers, today we're gonna look at Stripe. We're gonna create our brand new checkout page. We're gonna look at a couple of different ways you can create checkout pages, how you can integrate Stripe into your own apps using Vue.js and Express. So stay all the way to the end and I'll think you'll learn something. Hey, so we are today creating this checkout page here. So this is a checkout page. I'll tell you guys all about it, but for example, you can put in a name, Erik, test at example.com. You can put a street name, I don't know, Sycamore Street. Reno, Nevada, 89523, and then it has a credit card field at the bottom here. So it actually validation on here, and then after you put something in, whatever you want, you can hit pay, and it actually charges a Stripe account for you. It redirects, and if you don't necessarily want to use your own custom form, I'll show you how you can integrate Stripe's custom checkout pages by just clicking this pay $19.99 page. Look here, this is a custom page that you can essentially create, and it's all integrated in with Stripe, and you can actually buy something through here. And I'll show you how you can track this on your back end with some webhooks. So before we deep dive in how do we create this, I just want to have a quick word from our sponsor. The very first website I ever created was back during my high school days using a very old Packard Bell computer and hosted on GeoCities. It was for a classroom assignment and I got an A. That really opened up my curiosity on computers and led me to major in computer science in college. But did you know that in the US, only 47% of public high schools even offer computer science classes? And out of the 219 countries out there, only 73% are either only piloting computer science in high school or doing nothing at all. I truly believe that computer science and tech education can change someone's life. Our sponsor, .tech Domains, along with Namecheap, are donating 100% of their sale proceeds to code.org, who are helping every student in every school have the opportunity to learn computer science. I believe that everyone should get a chance to follow their passion in tech. And if you feel the same way, show your support by visiting go.tech/codewitheric or click the link in the description below to know more and do your bit to make a difference. All right, so here is the checkout page again that I have. So let's begin, and we're gonna take this in a few steps. And by the way, once again, thanks to our sponsor, .tech Domains. It's really awesome how they're partnering up and helping people learn web development and computer science. I think that's really, really cool. So here's the app here, and I'm gonna show you, I went ahead and created two apps, really. Just before I started rolling this camera here, I created a brand new Vue 3 app, and in this Vue 3 app, I'm using the latest version of the Stripe.js, which is a library we're gonna use. But let me go ahead and show you guys quickly around and show you what's inside here. Like I said, this is a Vue 3 app. I'm using something called Vite. And if I look inside here, this is the index.html. I'm including some libraries in here. First, I'm using this NES library, and that's kind of the look and feel of the page. And by the way, if you want to follow along, I'll put a link in the description to all these resources and this code, so that way you can kind of take this step by step if you like to code along with me. I've also added in some Press Start 2P, which is a cool font library, which I actually included inside the credit card field as well. And then I'm including the source. Now there's a couple of ways you can add Stripe to your projects. The official documentation, which by the way is pretty great. It's one of probably the best documentations out there for technical documentations. It recommends that you use Stripe either as a source tag, a script tag directly inside your header of your HTML, or you can download it as a JSON or excuse me, as a package and install it through npm, but I kind of just preferred using it as a script like this. I think this makes more sense, and they recommend this because it gives you some more security as well. So here's all the three things here. Now, if we look inside our package JSON, the only thing I installed outside that was Vue Router. So this is using Vite, which I created a brand new app. And then I also, on top of that, I created a few folders. So once again, I think I did this so it'll be just a little quicker to go through this tutorial if we have this as a basis. Inside my app view file, I'm using the router. And I only have two routes right now, and the two routes are home and success. And then inside the home route actually all it does is it shows the checkout, and that's this one right here. So this has the most code in it. If we look inside here, this is just HTML that I copy and pasted in here before we started. You can see here all we're doing is we're using these classes that are built into this this library. We have an image that I'm grabbing, this Donkey Konga image. Then I have a button at the bottom, and then I also have a button at the top. Right now, I don't have any Vue code or anything like that. It's empty. So we're going to go through and add in the actual logic to glue this all together to make it work. So we're going through 11 different steps. So I broke this up into 11 different steps so you can follow along. I'll put timestamps below so you can jump around if you like. So the first thing we need to do is to create a product, as you imagine. So there is a couple of ways of doing this. So here's my Stripe account. And what I did is, by the way, if you go in Stripe, it's absolutely free. You can go ahead and create it at stripe.com. And then I chose this for viewing testing data because throughout this tutorial, we're going to use the test data. Obviously, we're not going to use production data with real credit cards. And I highly recommend if you're testing to use the test data first because that's what makes the most sense. Stripe gives you a bunch of different ways to create to do payments. So you can do subscriptions, you can do one-time payments, and then they have their own products. So you can create like your own pages with your own products, or you can just kind of dynamically create your products as you like, and then use the Stripe API to actually do the payments for you. What I would recommend, like if you're brand new starting off and you have no idea how to use Stripe, it's not a bad idea to create products. So to create products, you just click the little products link here on the left-hand side. I guess I'll make this a little bit bigger. And then after you click the products button, you can go ahead and click add product. And it's gonna ask you a few pieces of information about this product, like the name, the description. You can upload a picture, and then it's going to ask you some information about pricing. So you can do standard pricing, gradual pricing, volume pricing. I mean, to make things as easy as possible, I would just do standard pricing, put a price, and do a one-time payment, and then click Save Product. So I went ahead and did that, and so I created this one called Donkey Kong Country. So it's basically priced at $20, $19.99, and it has this API ID. And so this is the one thing you'll need in this tutorial to show you how this works. So make sure you copy and paste this API ID. And the next thing it is, if you really didn't want to use technology at all, and for example, you didn't want to actually create your own web page, at this point, you can click this View Payment link, copy and paste this, and then just paste it into your URL. And here you go. Here is a whole dedicated site for your product. And it even has Apple Pay. It has Google Pay, that is. And you can just have someone, you can send this link to somebody and they can pay for whatever you're doing. And then you would have to figure out how to figure out after that actually someone paid. So you could like either look at the dashboard. You can use a service like Zapier too. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Zapier, but it's just like it's a service that you can connect in with Stripe that you can connect to another product. So you can like send yourself an email when someone purchases. And this would require like not having a website at all. You could just share this URL with people. Probably the best bet, and I think the next thing we want to do is let's see how we can create a redirect button to product so we don't have to do this. So instead of having to like just copy and paste this link everywhere, let's say I have a website and I just want it to redirect to this page, and then I want it to go to its own success page or its own failure page. So if you actually fill in all this information and click pay, it'll just tell you like, congratulations, you paid, but you can't really customize it or edit it very much. So it's not super useful. So let's see how we would do that. I want to have this button go to that page. That's that page we just saw, and then have a way to actually be able to go to a success page or failure page. I'm going to turn off my camera so you can see the whole page here. My face isn't in the way. All right, so let's begin here, and I'm going to create, since we're using Vue 3, I have this setup function here, and I can just go ahead and put anything I want in here to do setups or redirects. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create something called redirect. And what this redirect is going to do is I want it to redirect to a checkout page when someone clicks this. So I have this right up here at the top, this button. I'm going to do an @click event, and I'm just going to go to my new redirect URL, redirect method that is. And the next thing we need to do is actually get Stripe set up here, and then we can have this redirect do something. So what we're going to do is I need to, first inside the setup function, I'm going to create something called Stripe. It's going to be null. And then I want to set up Stripe here. And before I do this redirect, actually I'll make sure I pass it back, is I'm going to use the hooks. So don't get confused. Don't try to set up Stripe directly inside your setup. Use one of these setup hooks, and one of them is called onMounted. So I'm going to use onMounted here, and it's going to be async. And then this is going to return this is basically a function here, and then this is where I can kind of set up Stripe for the first time. So right up here, I'm going to import load Stripe from, and then at Stripe.js. So I'll make sure it's loaded. And then in this onMounted, I want to load it correctly. So I'm going to do Stripe equals await load Stripe. And then I need to put the Stripe key in. So to get our keys, if you go back to Stripe, you can go to the developers and then go to API keys. And we'll need to grab the publishable key and then a secret key. I'm not going to show you my secret key. But what you need first is when you're on the client side, you use the publishable key. And then when you're on the server side, you use the secret key. So I'm going to copy the publishable key. And since I'm using Vite, this is kind of a Viteism. I should say, I can create env file. And if I did that, oops, I didn't name that right. I'm going to rename this to .env. And inside this env file is where I can now put in some secret codes that I want. So I'm going to create one. And since it's Vite, I have to always call it Vite at the beginning with an underscore key. And I'm going to go ahead and paste this key in that I just got from that other screen. Cool. And now inside my checkout here, I should be able to go ahead and import it in. And the way you import it in through Vite, and this is going to be changed if using Vue CLI, but you can do import.meta.env.vite Stripe key. Awesome. So now, as long as this works, Stripe should be set up correctly. Now I could wrap this in a try catch block or try to catch the errors, but since we're just doing a quick demo, I'm not going to do that. But that's probably what you'd want to do if you're in a real production app. So now I have Stripe set up correctly. I can now do stripe.redirect to checkout. And that's going to take an object, and I need a few things inside this object. I need a success URL, and I'm going to make sure I can just put localhost right now. That's fine. I think I'm localhost port 4000, and I'm going to do success. And then I'll have a cancel URL in case they just end up just closing it. And I'm going to put localhost 4000. So it's just going to redirect back to the same page. And then I need two other things, and this is going to be called the line items. And inside this line items, and by the way, this is all in the official documentation from Stripe, but I'm going to have two things. Now, in older tutorials, you may not see this line items. You might see items, and that's when they use SKUs. So if you ever see SKUs and you're looking up Stripe tutorials, just remember that that's kind of a deprecated way of doing it. They don't use SKUs anymore, and you use line items. So in this line items, I'm going to put price. And the price we want to do is from the product we created. So if you go back to the product here, you need to grab this app API ID, just copy paste it, and that's going to be what you put in this price right here. And then quantity. So I'm just going to put 1. Obviously you could do more if you wanted to, really. And then I'll put mode, and I'll do payment. Oops. Okay, I see that I have a quick bug here. So you can use load Stripe this way if you're using it from a package file. So this would work if I'm using it from a package. But since I'm not using it from a package, I can load Stripe this way. So I just need to put in, instead of load Stripe, I just do Stripe here. And that'll load it correctly for us, right directly from the Stripe that we imported in through the CDN. And then one other thing is I have this onMounted hook. So I just need to make sure that I import this onMounted from Vue 3. Otherwise it won't work. So if I did that correctly and I refresh, cool. So now it's up and running here. And now since I did this button here, I should be able to, actually this button up here, I have this click, it goes to redirect. And then that redirect should go ahead and redirect us and using this price that we did. So let's see if this works. I'm going to save it again, refresh. I've clicked this pay button. Cool, so now redirecting to my new page. If I click back, it clicks back, it works. Now if I go on this page here, I can put in a test email, I can put in a test credit card, and then name on card, test, and I'll just put some random number in here. And now when I pay for it, what's really cool is that it'll automatically redirect to that success page I put in, which I put in localhost 4000 success. So this is just a random page that I created inside our app. Cool, so we got it up and running. Okay, so one thing we'll probably want to figure at this point is how do we in our back end see that this actually succeeded? So I went ahead and if you look inside this folder here, I have a Stripe example, which is empty right now, but this will be our example Express app. So let's go ahead and create that right now. It shouldn't be too bad. So I have 2 tabs open here. Here's my second tab, and I don't have anything created yet for my Express app. So let's create a really quick Express app to use with our Stripe app. So first I'm going to do npm init, and I'm going to hit through here and to ask where my entry point is. I'm going to do app.js. Is this okay? Cool. And now I want to install a few things to get this up and running. So I'm going to do npm I. I'm going to install cores. So we're going to install cores, and we're going to install .env. We're going to have that's where we're going to put our secrets. We're going to do express. We're going to do nodemon, and we're going to do Stripe. And so this will just take a moment, and this will all get installed. Great. So we have everything installed. And if we go back here, and let's we'll have to go and create some files now, since we have this set up. We'll create one called app.js. And I think that's the only one we really care about right now. Oh, inside our package.json, I always like to do this to make sure that we have a start. And in the start, we'll do nodemon, we'll do -- watch app.js. Just so we have it watching, and so that way we don't have to keep starting and restarting the server every 5 seconds. Cool. So now in this app, let's add in Express. So I'm going to use, one other thing in this package.json, I'm going to put this module. Well, we're going to have the type, and we're going to type module. And this will tell it that we're using ES6 imports, so it doesn't kind of complain to us. And so we're going to import Express from Express. We're going to import cores from cores. This is so we don't have to worry about cross-origin requests. We're going to do .env from .env. And we're going to import Stripe from Stripe. And let's go ahead and create an app. So we do an Express here. We're going to app use cores. And we'll add some configurations for our .env, but obviously right now we'll just leave it blank. Let's see here. Let's put it on port 3001. And let's see if it works. I'm just do a hello world here. And I did a whole video on Express. If you're interested, you can just search my channel for Express. I'll leave it in the notes. And now the last thing we want to do is make sure that we actually can listen. So we'll do app.listen, and actually I'll do 4001. That makes more sense. And we'll port here, and we'll do another arrow function, and we'll do console log running on, I don't know, port. Cool. So if this all works, we should be able to start the server. npm start. All right, so it's running on port 4001. If you go to 4001, cool, we got a hello world, so we're making progress. But obviously we want to do more than that. So we want to try to connect with Stripe. And first thing I really like to do is set up my env file. So I'm going to create a new env file. And then inside that env file, I'm going to add in a secret key. And then I also need an endpoint secret key, and I'll show you that too. So I'm obviously not going to do this on the camera, but I'll show you where in Stripe to get those keys. So first, to get the secret key, you got to go to Developers, API Keys, and then you just want to copy and paste this secret key right here. This will show that this secret key here is the one that you use on the server side. Never reveal it on the client side, because that'd be really bad. And then we also need to do this this endpoint secret, and we'll add that in a second. But let's do this one first. And so we'll just 1 second. Okay, so I have the secret key now inside my env file, so I should be able to go const stripe, new stripe, and then I'm going to grab it from the process.env secret key. And now I want to create a webhook. So I'm going to create a webhook, and this is going to be used to make sure that when someone purchases something, that the backend receives it, and then we can do something with it. Like we can send an email, or we can just kind of have it in our system, set it in a database. So I'm gonna put this as Stripe/webhook. You can call it whatever you like. And we're gonna do something called express.raw, and this is just a weird quirk of this. It asks you that in the documentation, it says that you need to send it as raw data. And then the third parameter here is going to be my async function, which I'm going to have a request and a response. Okay, and now we need to do a few things. We're going to do this request.headers, and we're going to grab the Stripe signature. This is actually what should be coming from it. We're going to have an event. And then we're going to do this try catch block. And in this try, I'm going to do this, construct this event. So I'm going to copy and paste this from my other screen, just to make this a little bit quicker. So what this is saying is that we have an event. It's a Stripe webhook, construct event. We're going to pass in the request.body, the signature, this header here, and then this endpoint secret. Now you're probably thinking, like, how do we get this endpoint secret? So the way we do that is when you create your webhook, it's going to have an endpoint secret, this signing secret right here that you'll need to get. So we'll come back and I'll show you how that works. But for right now, we'll assume that it's there, and I'll add that in a second when we create it. Now also I want to say, if this goes wrong, I'm going to just paste in this webhook error message. Cool. So now if everything goes right, this is where you can kind of check to see the response that comes back and what you want to do with it. And once again, I'm going to copy and paste this. This is really literally from the official documentation, and so I don't feel like you want to hear me type for 5 minutes. So what happens is, if this works, the reason we do this construct event is we make sure that the actual information that's coming from this hook is real, and that it's actually came from Stripe, and it's not just some hacker that's trying to break into our server and that trying to get a free product. So if the event type works, it comes through here, it'll succeed, and then we can do something with it. And the most common ones you have is payment intent is succeeded or attached. And then you can have like payment intent was successful. But right here where this console log is where you would want to like add it to your database, or send out an email, or do something with it. And this information that comes from this webhook have a bunch of information that you can use. But for right now, we'll just make sure it says console log that it was successful. And if all goes well, then you probably want to end it with just a response that says received true. And this is it for this webhook. So let me see if we can get this webhook working. So the way to test this is, you would normally do this 2 ways. You can use the Stripe CLI, which I didn't set up for this demo, or you can post this somewhere online into some serverless function somewhere and run it. But I kind of found a in between the CLI and just posting it somewhere in a serverless function, is I was using this local tunnel program, which if you can use this local tunnel, And what this does is it creates a tunnel. So if you run stuff locally, it creates this URL that you can then share and you can do testing with. Obviously, you wouldn't want to use this for production, but it's pretty handy. So if I come back over here, I'm going to keep running it on 4001. I'm going to create another window here, a third terminal. And I already have this one running right now. I already installed it. I did npm install tacg local tunnel. So now I can just run this from the command line. So I'm going to do lt -- port. And if you see from this one, it's running on port 4001. So I'm going to do port 4001. And now it gives me this URL. And I can see this is kind of gives me an outside URL to see if things work. Now, the first time you run it, it says, by the way, people have nefariously used this in the past to trick people for their login information. But if you just click continue here, it'll go directly to your server. And it only does that on like web browsers. So it should just work when we set up through Stripe. So if I go through Stripe, I'm going to go back to developers. I'm going to go to Webhook. I'm going to create a new endpoint. It's going to be this one. But remember, we did Stripe / well, we'll take a look. If we go out of here, it was Stripe /webhook /webhook. And then this is a Stripe webhook. And then you can select the event. So what I really care about is the intent payment, this payment intent. And I just want to make sure that it succeeded. And you'll understand that more. So every time you create a payment intent is created in Stripe. And then when it succeeds, basically it gets charged to the account. So then I can select event here. Payment attempt. And I'll do succeeded. Okay, it's already there. I'm going to add the endpoint. You can add multiple ones if you want. And now to actually get this working, I need to add in that secret key. So I'm going to do that off camera. I'm just going to click this reveal, grab the secret key, and paste it into the .env file. So this will just take a second. All right, so I went ahead and did that. Now I can test to see if this webhook worked. So we can do it two ways. First, I'm going to have this window open. Actually, we'll do our server, this one right here. So it's running on 4001. I don't have any information yet that it actually works. So let's run the webhook. So I'm going to send test webhook. Okay, so I just went and stopped and restarted the server. So I think that actually should have fixed it. I didn't make any other changes. So I'm just going to try it one more time. Send test webhook. Send test webhook. Cool, says it was succeeded. And if I look inside here, payment intent was successful. Awesome, so it went ahead and sent it correctly. And now we can test it inside our app. So if we go back to our video game store, there we go. And we go back to our video game store, we press the button. And this will bring us to our page. We'll do test@test.com. I guess it doesn't like this. We can do test. There we go. And we'll just put in some random numbers here. And test 89523. And then we'll pay it. And it should succeed. Cool. So we got payment intent was successful. It redirected correctly. And also, if you look in the Stripe dashboard, which is right here, I can go to payments. And I can see the last one I did was $19.99 from test.test.com at 9:02 p.m. So cool. So it definitely worked. Awesome. So the next thing we want to do, and I'll close this, is see if we can have this checkout form here, which if we go back to 4000, let's see if we can have this going in. Now, I did create this Donkey Kong country right here, but it could be anything. So you don't have to actually create the product inside here. You should be able to just send any payment intent that you want. So I'm going to go back to the checkout page. So we did this. We created the product. We set up the redirect. We created the back end. Now we're going to create a custom front end to submit any product. So I think the first thing we need to do inside this one is to take a look at the HandleSubmit and also to use something called elements. So if we look at our checkout page right here, we have this credit card at the bottom, but it's blank. There's nothing there. So let's see if we can get the credit card to actually do something. So on this on-mounted hook, I'm going to add some things here. So this element, by the way, basically what this is with Stripe Elements, with Stripe Elements, it creates an iframe. And so inside the iframe, it has like your own credit card processing. So the credit cards are never, ever on your server. They're always on Stripe server. And that's what Stripe Elements does for us. So let's set that up. I'm going to create an element type equals card. And we already have this Stripe account where we created this Stripe, where we loaded it. And now I can do, I'm going to create a new thing called let elements here equals null. And I'm going to create something called loading, which I'll show you guys in a second, which we should be able to kind of make the whole form wait for it to be loaded so people can't submit it twice. So I'm going to do this elements here. We're going to do stripe.elements. And then I'm going to have element. And now this is where we're going to create it here. And we're going to do, it's going to be element style or type that we just created. And now we can actually add a style to it as well. And I'll show you how that works. We have, I'm going to copy and paste this from this other screen, but basically this is from the official documentation as well. You create this object. Here it is right here. And I'm calling it style. And then I can set the base colors, the font weight. I'm using the Press Start 2P font because that's what I'm using on this page. I can do the font size. And so essentially with this, and I think I have one, there we go. With this style here, I can have it inside this element type. So I'm going to set the style of it. Now to really get it to work, we have to mount it somewhere. So I'll do element.mount. And it can be any kind of CSS selector. So I want to mount it right here for the credit card. So this is Stripe element mount point. That's where it's going to be. So I'm going to just paste that in there. And since it's an ID, I'm going to put the hashtag in here. And then also, I created that loading. I'm going to put value false here. So that way we have this loading because it starts off as true. And if I did this correctly, it should mount. Oops, I actually have ref right here. I'm going to import that as well. Always forget my imports. Awesome. So now let's see if it works here. So I'm going to scroll down. Cool. So you can see right at the bottom, now we have credit card number. And we're going to put a number in. And it also has some built-in, if you put some random numbers in here, that doesn't make sense. It has automatic error correction in here. You can also, I'm not going to show it in this one, but you can use this mount here in this element that we mounted. And you can do events from it. So I can have an on event or an invalid event. So if this is invalid, that I can disable the pay button, things like that. But it's a little beyond the scope of this. But I just kind of want to show you. Also, now we have this loading. So I kind of want to use this loading to do a few things. So I have this field set right here. And if I have this loading, I'm going to do this class here. And in this class, we're going to have, I'm just going to call it DIS, but it's going to be loading. So essentially, if the field set is this loading, it's going to, I have this class set in place called DIS, which is kind of disabling it to make it look disabled. And I like to do that also on the button down here. So on this button, we'll put the same kind of class on. And so this will make it just a little nicer. That way someone can't double click it after it's starting to load. And we'll also, when we submit it, we'll disable it too. So I'm going to have a DIS here, loading. Cool. I mean, you're not going to see really any difference here. But for a second, the whole thing was disabled while this credit card was loading. Great. And then also for this text here, instead of just paying $19.99, we can make it dynamic so it says loading while it's doing it. So if it's trying to load, then we'll say loading. Otherwise, it'll say pay $19.99. So you can do little nice touches like this so it looks a little bit better and a little more professional, and it allows someone not to double click the button a bunch of times. Awesome. All right, so now we have our credit card number, but what we want to do is when you submit the form, it should automatically submit it to the back end. So if we look at our next step, we need to set the on-mounted hook for Stripe elements with mount. We did that. And now we need to set up loading. And now we need to add the HandleSubmit button. So easiest way to do that, at the top, we have this form. And we have submit prevent. I actually already have it in here. I have this HandleSubmit. So this is means that anytime you do a submit action, it's going to set it to the handle submit, and we'll just make sure that works. And since we're using Vue 3, I'm just going to create another function here called HandleSubmit, and it's going to have an event. And I'm just going to console log the hi and then the event, and then make sure anytime you're using Vue 3, you have to return it. So HandleSubmit. Now, if it did that right, it should work. So if I put some test data in here, I'll just put some stuff. I hit pay. Open up my console, see if it works. Oh, don't worry about that error there. Pay. Okay, so it definitely sent it over, which is good. Okay, so now we're going to create the handle submit. Now that we're going to do this in steps. We're going to first creating the billing details, and then we're going to create the backend endpoint for the payment intent. So it's going to take a few steps here, but let's just dive on in. So first, on this handle submit, if the loading.value, remember, since this is a ref, you have to reference it with .value inside the JavaScript. We're just going to return. So we don't, if it's true, we don't want someone to submit twice. And then I'm going to do loading.value equals true. And now I'm going to grab some information out of here. So we want the name, email, address, city, state, zip, and we're going to use this handy dandy way of doing this, which is through this object.fromEntries. And this is just kind of a quick way. I did a whole video on this. This is a quick way of grabbing stuff out of the event target without having to type out event.target.name.value and so on and so forth. And now we're going to create a billing details. And this is what's going to be used when we actually submit the payment. So we're going to have a name, an email, an address, and that's going to have a city, and line 1 is address. This is going to be submitted to Stripe. State, and then a postal code, which we're going to have zip in here. So we're going to use that in a second. And now we're going to have a card elements. Yeah, we're going to call it card element. And that's going to grab the elements.getElement. We're going to grab the card. And essentially, we had to remember here, this element type card. We're basically grabbing the element again. And then we're going to have a try catch block. And I'm going to use this. And now, inside this try catch block, we're going to do a response. And I'm going to use, some people use Axios. I'm just going to use fetch. It's a little bit more of a pain, but we're going to do localhost. We're going to do our backend, which is on 4001. And let's create a new webhook. We'll call it just /Stripe. And we need a few options in here. This is really important. When I tested this, I messed this up. So make sure you put the right options. We're going to do post. And we're going to have some headers. And we have to do this content type. And we're going to do application JSON. And then we want to send over a body. And we're going to stringify. And we're just going to send an amount, $19.99. And then that should return a secret, which we'll destructure right now. And we'll await response.json from it. And I guess we can console log, by the way, shortcut CLG. And then that'll console log the, we'll do secret. And so before we get too far, I want to just see if I can get this working. So let's go and jump on into the back end to our app.js and see if we can create this this endpoint, which will just take a second. Okay, so in this endpoint, we're going to use Express again, and this one's going to be called a post. And one thing, be careful. This special. We had to use this express.raw. So I'm going to create another endpoint, but this one, I'm going to use express.json. And when you set it like this, it kind of sets it for the whole app. And if you put this at the top, you're going to have some weird errors when you run this. So always, when you're doing the Stripe webhook, use this app.execute. This is basically setting a middleware for express.json so you can parse the body of the message that comes in. Always put it after this webhook. call or it won't work. I ran into that problem. So I'm going to do an app post. We're going to make our new Stripe endpoint. Once again, it's async with a request and a response. And we're going to grab an amount. And I'll talk about this amount in 1 second. Really, this amount here is a pretty bad way to do it. Like, normally you would never put the amount in through the response to a backend endpoint like this, because someone could just change this amount to 1 penny and then get your product for free. So what you'd want to do is you would want to maybe send over something else that identifies this unit or this product. Maybe you have an ID or something, and then you look up in a database, and also maybe you show the amount, and then you calculate it on the server side and then charge it. Otherwise, some people will abuse this and send over a penny. But for this demo, I'm going to leave it on amount here. But I'll put a note here, should never trust the client side amount. And then we're going to do another try catch block here. And I'll just use this. And this is where we're going to use a payment intent. So I'm going to do payment intent. And this is basically in the official documentation, this just tells Stripe like, hey, I'm going to start doing a payment here. Try to record this, and you can actually keep track of payment attempts. It even says like you can do this as soon as someone gets to the checkout page. Create the payment intent even before they fill everything out, just so you can keep track of this. So this actually doesn't charge their card until it's done. Now you can, in some tutorials you may see people charging the card at the payment intent, and you can do that with an optional parameter. I think it's better though to, and the official documentation kind of recommends this, to create the payment intent first and then pass the secret key from the payment intent back to the client side and then have them complete the purchase. That way, if something happened with their internet or like they lose connection, that they don't automatically get charged. It doesn't get charged until the app loads again. So that's the way I'm going to do it. But I mean, you can leave a comment below if you don't think that's right or you would like to do it a different way. But that's literally what they recommend in the documentation and what I've seen other people do. So if you do payment intent .create, and then this is going to take in the amount and then currency, which will do US dollars. Obviously, if you're in a different country, you do something else. And then we're gonna have a response.status. We're gonna send a 200, and then we're gonna send a JSON object back, which is gonna be a secret. And this is gonna be the payment intent dot client. I think it's called client underscore secret. Yeah, underscore secret. Cool. And then if obviously there's a problem, we don't want to send the intent, and we'll do console.log, I don't know, error, and then we'll do response.status 500 or whatever one you want to pick. Probably 500 would be great because that's server error. But then you can do error here. And this is it for our server-side code for this whole app. So this is our new Stripe endpoint. And we just grab them out. We're creating a payment intent, and we're sending this secret, client secret, from this payment intent back to the client side. And obviously on the client side, you wouldn't ever want to save this secret, but it's just used for it. Cool. And I can check to see, okay, it reloaded, no errors. So now I can go back out to my checkout. And the next thing I want to do my checkout is I created HandleSubmit, create the billing details, create the backend endpoint. Now we need to submit the fetch, the backend in this HandleSubmit, and then create the payment method. It's a mouthful, I know. Okay. So I'm going to go back to this really long HandleSubmit. And this is probably the place where you'd maybe want to break this into different pieces, but since we're doing a demo, I don't care. And also I'm not catching any errors here or doing anything. So we'll just assume that this went through correctly and we have this secret. And in fact, maybe we could just test it real quickly. So I'm going to inspect. I'm going to go to my console, make sure it doesn't, oops, I have an unexpected word, reserved word. Oh, here. I have this await here, this await fetch. So let's go back up here. This await fetch, but I didn't make this function async. And don't by the way, I think it's async. There we are. By the way, if you're using Vue 3, don't put the async on the setup at the top. Otherwise, it'll think it's a suspense function, and that'll screw everything up. So always, always, always make sure you put the async on the event itself, and it should still work without having to put the async on the setup. So if I refresh it again, okay, everything's back and running. We'll look at this loading. Don't worry about this loading error right now. So, or warning, really. Okay, so if I just press pay $19.99, cool. So it came back. It sent back this secret key, which is good. We don't really need it, but we'll take care of it. We don't really need it right this second, but we will use it inside here. All right, so it sent back the secret. So now I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new payment method request. And that's going to wait Stripe, if I can spell right. And this is probably also where having TypeScript would be nice, because it's really easy to mess up the names of these things. Create payment method. And this is going to take a few things here. It's going to take a type, which is going to be a card, and this is going to be the card element that we created. And then we're going to do billing details. And this is going to be the billing details we created earlier. That's this billing details here. Oh, by the way, I know what's the problem here with this loading. I didn't pass it back out. So let me just do that real quickly. Loading. Okay, so now if I refresh it, okay, everything's working fine. So now I still haven't billed the card, even though I've done all this. So the last part we really need to do is build the card. So we're going to do error. We're going to wait Stripe, and basically you do this confirm card payment. And then you have to send in the secret that we had earlier, secret. And then we're going to have a couple of things inside here. We're going to send over a payment method. And that's going to be this payment method request. And that's going to be payment method.id, I think it is. There it is. Yeah, that's it. And if it has an error, it'll display an error, and we can do something if this error do something. But if the error doesn't exist, it won't return it. And then we just assume that everything works. We'll do loading value false. I guess we could say if error return, but otherwise loading value equals false. We'll console log. Well, we'll also do a router here, and to route to a different page. And I guess we never, okay, here's our catch here. We could surround this whole thing in another try catch block, but I don't think I'm going to. So I do want to use the use router. So I'm going to route to a different place if it succeeds. So I'm going to do import use router, and this is part of Vue router 4, I believe. And then inside here, we'll add something called const router equals use router. And now we should be able to use this router to actually redirect to the right place. So I'm going to come back down here, and if this all worked, I'm going to router.push to our success, and then we'll check to see if it went through. All right. So let's see if this works. I'm going to put in test YouTube. Test example, we'll call it test YouTube at example.com, 1234 Street, I don't know, New York 90023. And there's no validation in any of these forms, but obviously we could. And then we'll just put in a random number, and you can put in a test number inside here. So one of the test keys for Stripe is 411111. It's also 424242 is another one. And I'll put 123 89523. And if this all works, we'll submit it. You can see how it's loading. And okay, so we got an error that reference secret is not defined on line 190. So we had an issue here because something is not right. So I have this console log secret. Let's do this. Since it's in this try catch block, I'm gonna move this all up into the side of the try catch block and try it again. Okay, so let's try it one more time. So we'll go test YouTube 2, test YouTube 2 at example.com, 1234 Street, New York, 90023, and we'll put our test number in here. And we'll do 1023, 123, 895, 90023. We'll hit enter. Awesome, looks like success worked. We did it. So now we can go into our React payments and we'll refresh it. And cool, here's our test YouTube 2. Here it is. We can also get a bunch of information about it. It succeeded, the ID number, what credit cards we used, related payments. It says the address, even though it's in Nevada, it even gives you a map. Awesome. So we have done it. We have created our own checkout page, and it's all working. And I believe if we check the our payment intent was successful too. So it went through here, and we could have done something on this side. Since the client side actually charged it, now we have the webhook got triggered, and now we have it on the back end side too. Perfect. All right, so this is not done. If we wanted to continue on, one thing we can do is obviously add more error correction in here. We could also, in our, as I said earlier, on this page right here, having some better validation would be great to make sure all these were actually filled out before you can hit the pay button. Getting validation on the card number so the pay number doesn't highlight until you have an actual valid credit card would be another thing. Adding in something into our app.js file to do something with this webhook, so that way we like talk to a database or we send out an email to the client. Like there's a whole bunch of more things we can do, but I think this is a great starting point. If any of this was confusing, feel free to kind of go back through the video, try to understand it more, and also I'll include a link to another app that was similar to this, but they did it in React, and they used the React library. So check that out too. Thanks.